to Scifisteve's Museum of circa 1950s spaceships, rocket ships, and flying saucers. In the years that have gone on here and the drawings that I have presented to you, one of the things I really enjoyed doing was finding engines that would actually allow the ships to behave in a manner that you saw in the television series. Among them being the nuclear engines that went on to Commando Cody's ship, things like that, that actually were under development at that period in time. The ones that I put on Buck Rogers' ship, the air-breathing nuclear-powered engines, really existed back in that time period. Rocky Jones, the Vespar engines that I put in there were just approved to drive our Mars vehicles in our interplanetary flights that we'll be doing. Now, one of the things that never got brought up in any of the television shows of that series, and for just reasons, I guess, was an interdimensional jump. That is, jump from where we are to another dimension, travel around, and then come back at a known location. I'm going to attempt to do that here, and that is what these drawings are all about. The mission statement for the ship is to define procedures that will allow you to successfully jump from our dimension to an alternate dimension. 2. Navigate that alternate dimension. 3. Leave the alternate dimension and come back into our dimension at a known location. Okay, this ship is going to be built on the Space Patrol technology. That is, from our review of all of our ships in the 50s, only Space Patrol has the kind of technology that would allow it to do a dimensional shift. So I'm using their warp drive, their antimatter models, that kind of thing to make this go. I'm not going to redo them here for you. You want to find out about them, you got to go over to Space Patrol and the review of the Terra 5, because I'm going to come over to this side and I'm going to say warp drive is exactly based on the Terra 5. I'm designating this ship's name as 113 Heavy Jump. Let's give an overall look at the ship itself. It has an appearance similar to that of a surfboard. It's long, it's wide, it's relatively narrow, it's rounded at both ends. It's 240 feet long, it's just under 80 feet at the widest point, it's about 30 feet at the thickest point. The warp nacelles, the lower nacelles, are 50 foot off from center and are each 85 foot long. The jump drive nacelles, which are much larger, are 60 foot off center and 110 feet long. The ship is largely made of Endurium, 6 to 8 inches thick. Now, we discussed at length on Space Patrol why a ship cannot be made of pure Endurium. The nacelles are not made of Endurium at all, except at some structural points. They have to be made of composite materials, aluminum, titanium, and some Endurium structure. And this is because you have to allow the energy created by these two different nacelles to radiate around the ship. That is, we all know about the warp bubble. The warp bubble basically has to distort the space around the ship. The jump has to create a matching frequency to move us to another dimension. Quick overview of the ship, laying out from left to right, the computers, the bridge, officers' quarters, medical, manufacturing. The large room there is what I call the dropship room, followed by the power center, followed by the matter-antimatter pods. On the lower deck you have the crew members' quarters, and you have the galley and exercise room. Okay, now we're going to add the warp drive, and I only added one of the nacelles to this side, but I wanted you to see where it's positioned and the approximate size of it. This nacelle warp drive is exactly like the nacelle warp drive that's on the Terra 5, including the special heavy elements that make warp drive possible. Okay, let's add the jump engines. The jump engines are what enable you to leave this dimension and move to another dimension. What's the science behind it? Well, string theory says that there are 11 dimensions, of which we live in one, and that the other dimensions, 10 of them, besides ours, would be friendly to subatomic particles as we know them. which means you can go from here to another dimension and return without being destroyed. Okay, the control mechanism between dimension A and dimension B is vibration of the subatomic particles. These engines allow you to change the vibration rate of the subatomic particles within their field of control. Now, experiments done with the Hadron Collider show, and the only ones I've ever read about, electrons run through the Hadron Collider, collide, and then you track them. In the tracking, it shows that the electron moves along a line and disappears, and then suddenly, down the line, reappears without leaving any tracking. That is, it's here, goes somewhere, and then comes back. And of course, the theory is it goes to another dimension. Alright, we're going to start our tour now. Now, normally I would do a walk up to the ship and we'd go in a hatch or a door. And I would do that because the television shows from that era would only build you like a 3/4 size model of the ship that they would put on a studio, or just that portion of the ship that they would need to have you walk in. And I would do the walk in so you could see the relationship of a person to the entire size of the ship. And I thought it was kind of necessary for you to get the feel of it. This ship never existed anywhere. So we're going to start the tour inside on the main deck, and we're going to go from there. We enter the ship at the main bridge, and we're on the captain's chair, which is an elevated chair, and we're looking forward to a Star Trek type of screen with some sub-monitors alongside it. As you can see, there's a lot of workstations here, and that's because this is an experimental ship. They're looking for different things at different places and how the ship is going to behave in a different dimension. So detailed readouts of what's going on are critical to the captain and the survival of the ship. Okay, right in front here is the helm. This is the master control panel for all the systems you see here. That is, he can pull off any portion or full screen from any other station. Bring it here, manipulate it, keep it, take just a portion of it, or send it back to the original platform that it ran on. However, its primary purpose is to fly the ship. Okay, this ship is primarily a deep space craft. It's really not designed to fly in the atmosphere, although if you slow it down enough, you can. But to take a quick look at it, now the two discs in the center on the lower portion of the screen are the pinpoint navigation. Okay, these operate just like the ones in Space Patrol, and the detailed explanation of the one in Space Patrol is valid for these. Also, you notice the grid there. That is for interstellar flight. Alright, you also see that there are other power controls and things like that that can be brought down to here and manipulated and used to make the ship go. General power distribution. Primary propulsion. Interstellar navigation. Environmental Control Center. Master Control Panel for the Warp Drive. The last panel here is the one that's important to our mission, and this is the one that will deploy buoys in the alternate dimension. Okay, the first room behind the main bridge is the officers' quarters or planning quarters. This room has multiple purposes. First, this is where we do the planning for the next operation or the post-mortem after the operation is complete. Determine what needed to be done, and then the post, you determine what actually got done. It is also the housing quarters for the officers. We have as many as 6 officers on the ship. Each one of those green panels is a small living area for the officers. Okay, along the side you'll see the green doors that slide up and down. Behind the green doors is a bed for each one of the officers, along with private and personal containment areas for their clothes, goods, whatever it is that they want, small television. You'll see that there's a bed there. That bed can be moved into several different positions. It can face to the right or to the left. Goes back down into a sleeping. It can slide all the way back, and the officer can stand in there and change clothes and make himself ready for the day. Okay, we're going to do a detailed walkthrough of the bathrooms here. Now we're going to do this one. All the rest are the same. So bear with me while we walk through this one in a little bit of detail. First of all, the solid door moves to the side and we step in and we're going to find a series of sinks here. All of them have mirrors and everything like that, and this is where you start. First, we turn to the left here and we're going to take a look at the showers. The curtain folds up. These are all folding curtains, no solid doors inside. Those brass things move up and down and get you all wet. Then we'll swing around to the toilets. There are 3 toilets. The folding door folds open. You take a look at it, at the toilet, and then we're going to exit the officers' quarters. Leaving the officers' quarters, you notice as we head back, you have to go up a little bit, and that's because from this point back, the ship is 2 floors in height. So we just have to go up a little bit here. And this is the medical center, complete with beds, scanning, emergency surgery, that kind of thing. Over on the right, we have all kinds of medical supplies and everything like that to make this compartment go. Here's one of the patient's bed, and as you can see, there are 3 green panels, 2 on each side, 1 at the foot, and these are very elaborate sensor systems that run diagnostics on the patient all the time, monitor the patient's condition. This is reflected back on the screen behind them. On the control panel that is in front of the screen are all kinds of pre-established tests that can be run on a patient, diagnostics, things like that. Recommendations can be made by the computer to assist the doctor. The last table in the room is the surgical table, and the additional sensors, which appear as a partial cylinder, can travel up and down, closely examining various structures of the body, actually even helping the doctor to manipulate them into place for a successful operation. Okay, here are some of the medical cabinets for saving items, medicine, stuff like that. Let's exit medical now and move our way over to the container files. Okay, this is the ship's storage area and manufacturing. The device you see in the front there, it looks sort of like a boxing ring, is the 3D manufacturing. The console in front of it can pull up any part in the ship or that is being used for deployment and create it right here as needed. On the left, you can see the bottles that hold the component parts that make the various objects for the 3D printer. Now, if you notice on the 3D printer, there are those red bars. Those red bars can heat the area because some of the things that you do require curing. Okay, in the backpack, you'll be able to see containers which contain parts that are too complicated to make in the 3D printer or would take too long to print them. You can go back there, you can pull them out, bring them down, and take the parts out as needed and deploy them. On the right, you'll see another box. That box is used for 3D printing of very, very small, minute objects that may be needed. All right, let's move to the lower decks. Now, as we're walking down the hall, I want you to take a look at the indentations that are on the outside wall. Those indentations are there for a purpose. They limit the energy being generated by the jump engines so that they don't migrate outside of the hull of the ship, and they can find the energy within the ship. Now, they're very similar, like if you take a look at like your microwave oven and you look at the glass door, you'll see that there's like a black grid in there, but there are small holes. And what happens is the wave hits there and they vibrate back and forth within there and then back into the microwave. These serve that purpose. They help to confine the energy and focus it within the ship to make the jump more efficient. Okay, I thought it'd be kind of fun to look at the galley as something a little bit different. So what I came up with was a series of vending machines. And I thought, wouldn't it be neat if the vending machines could act sort of like a 3D printer? That is, you go in there and to a specific vending machine, say you want fruits or vegetables or cheese or something, and each vending machine would have the chemicals necessary to produce that particular product. And it would also produce it in the shape that was desirable. So you could actually sit here and pull out the bread, pull out the cheese, and make it appear on a plate the way you want it. And then the little doors to the right typically allow you to toast it or move it along to add a little subtle difference to it to keep it interesting. So you're going to be in space for quite a while, and boy, I'll tell you, food's important. Okay, the last machine on the this side of the room with vending machines is basically your washing apparatus. Now it's more than just clothes and things like that. You put your clothes in at the top, they come out one level down. You put your shoes in at the next level, they come out one level down, all polished and ready to go. Your clothes are going to be all clean and maybe even folded to take a little thing from Lost in Space, which I thought was terrific. Okay, as we finish up here and we look on the back wall, you're going to see the standard restrooms, bathrooms, and stuff like that. It has the sinks, all that kind of stuff. It's just duplicated down to here. I'm not going to walk through it again. We turn around and you'll see exercise cycles. We have rowing bikes and stuff like that to help keep you in shape. We have a large screen up there in case you want to watch something that's going on. And we'll walk to the exit on this and prepare to go to the cruise quarters. This is the cruise quarters. This is where the crew comes to sleep, rest, and entertain themselves. They can get food from the galley and bring it over here and eat it if they choose to. But this is where they sleep. Notice the little green cabinets, similar to the officers' quarters, not nearly as large. We put 9 people in over here, right? Can you get in there and sleep and rest and stuff like that? Do you have a small amount of space to put your clothing and personal items? Yes, you do. But if you want to get dressed and undressed, you have to come out here or go into the restrooms at the end. For entertainment and stuff like that, along this other wall here, you have computers, keyboards, and things like that that you can use for entertainment or education. Let's leave the cruise quarters and walk back to the drop room. Oh, this is the hangar deck, or drop deck as I call it, and from here we launch all the buoys that we're going to place in the alternate dimension. Now, as you can see, we got 4 or 5 stacked up here. They got big numbers on them so you can identify them and what stars they're going to be associated with. Now, a little more into what I planned on doing. You're going to place one of these in the alternate dimension for each star system that falls under Space Patrol jurisdiction. So you would go to your star system, let's say Sol, make a jump directly up to the alternate, and then place this there. It would be a beacon then on the other side, the alternate universe, for you to navigate from. Okay, you would then drop out of the other dimension, come back to our dimension, fly at warp speeds to Alpha Centauri, do the same jump there, place the correct buoy for that star system there. Now you have a link between the two. Then you go and you do the other star systems that we have. Now you have a network. Once you have a network, you can then move from our dimension to any place on the other dimension. And of course, the hope is that you'll be able to move in the new dimension at speeds so fast that from our side of the dimension, it might even be perceived as instantaneous. As you look at these buoys, it is clear that the buoys are way too large for the purpose of just generating a signal for other ships to home in on. The problem for me when I was building these things is when they leave our mother ship and the energy that is holding it in the new dimension, they move outside of that field. These buoys have to be able to carry their own dimension jump and the horsepower to drive it. So with those two components added to the buoy, it got considerably larger. The actual frequency, amount of energy needed to hold the buoy in the new dimension is fed to the buoy just before launch, and that will allow the buoy to stay in the new dimension. This is the power center of the ship, and because the ship requires just gigantic amounts of power to do the jump, this is a real matter, antimatter power generation system. Okay, this is the entire thing, right, surrounding the core, which is behind all of this tubing and everything like that. And we'll get in what all the tubing and everything like that does, and then we'll get into the actual core. This is located at the very back of the ship, just in front of the engines, because he also uses the fuel that makes the propulsion engines go for his raw fuel supply. Alrighty, as we first walk into the power center, you're taking a look here at these three, what appear to be similar to like a transformer. Basically what these are doing is they are separating the flow of energy that's moving through the conduit just above into electrons, photons, and anti-gravitons, which we use for electrical power, computer power, and the repel array system. Okay, if you notice, the pipe or conduit is actually suspended, so it doesn't touch anything at this particular point because we don't want any grounding out. If you look a little bit in the back, you can see part of the antimatter chamber. Over to the left and against the wall is a tremendous cooling system as this gets hot. And as you can see, it gets hot, and there's these railings around the outside to prevent you from walking into it and burning yourself. This is just one of a couple of monitors down here to monitor the various systems and components throughout the ship, plus the reactor itself, and it's just to keep tabs on what's going on. Okay, here's the collision chamber. Here the matter and the antimatter come together. On the right hand side, you can see most of the plumbing there is controlled through magnets, so that the antimatter never touches the sides or anything like that. That's neither here nor there. The point is that at the center of the container, the matter and the antimatter meet, and they basically, in the explosion, create gamma radiation. Gamma radiation is a very high intensity radiation. Okay, it is picked up by the 6 points around the sphere and then conducted into the chambers we discussed on the other side, where the gamma radiation is slowed down, okay, to various speeds to create the type of energies we need to run the ship. I told you on the entry that the control panels and things like that were duplicated on the other side. Here is that duplication. And now let's exit the generator room. Let's take a ride up to the battery room. If the whole ship is what I call cold, everything is off, turned off, dead in space, that kind of thing, this is where it all comes back to life. This is the GPHS battery systems, and it's from here everything would be restarted. This is the emergency backup for the ship. I have one, and it's sort of different from most other ships. You wouldn't think that you would shut off like a jet fighter or something like that, but this is an experimental ship going into experimental places, and for reasons unknown, you may have to turn the ship off, or the ship will turn off by itself, and we can restart everything from here. Let's leave the battery room and move our way up to the jump engine. Okay, we're inside the dimensional jump engines. Let's describe the major components that go into these. As you can see down at the far end and directly behind us are the cooling units. Keep all the temperatures down. On the left are the energy generators, and these are going to generate the energy necessary to push us into another dimension. On the right hand side are the projectors. They will take the energy created from the left and project it around the ship, changing the frequency of the ship so that it can slip into another dimension. Okay, as we took our walk from one end to the other, we passed several pairs of control panels, and these are specific control panels for this room only. They don't flip around like we've seen the other control panels do throughout the rest of the ship. They are fixed for this purpose of controlling these devices. Now, if you notice, they're on a rail, and you can slide these up and down to the various components that are alongside here. And there are 3 sets, so you could move these up and down to various components, go up and down and change them. But you can have control of any of the components from here, and the whole purpose of these controls are to make sure that you're going to get the amount of energy necessary to change the frequency of the ship so that you'll simply leave R dimension and move to the other. We call it a jump. It's just a move. That's all there is to it. But if you notice, this is the port accelerator and the starboard accelerator, and there's a set of course, the other nacelle on the other side. You punch in which one you want, and then there, along the top there, are the different components that make up the energy generating portion of this. You select the ones, and you'll see all those little squares fill up. You touch it, you can bring it down to the lower sub panel there, which says component details, and it'll give you the detail of that particular component of the energy generating portion of this engine area. This is the second of two control panels that it takes to operate the jump engines, and it's similar to the other one up on top. That is, we still have the port generator and the starboard generator and things like that. The long bar there represents the distribution crystal that runs the entire length of this nacelle, and it actually has minor fluctuations that can be inserted into the wave generator in the various component parts that you see divided up there. So at those division points, it shows the amount of energy. Now, what this does is it has to engulf the ship. It's not a warp field. This actually just engulfs the ship, no more than necessary, because we don't want to expend more energy. But you certainly can't leave any gaps. You can't have some portion of the ship outside of this field, because when you hit go, you're not going to get all your component parts set up for the frequency of the dimension you want to go to. So it's got to extend out a little more than needed, but no more than necessary. Okay, and again, you can touch any one of those particular segments on the distribution crystal up there, bring it down for modifications, make corrections, tap it, go back up and put them into play. That concludes our tour of 113 Heavy Jump Spaceship. I hope you enjoyed the drawings. I hope you enjoyed the artwork.